The day my father died, I was at the grocery store buying bananas. I remember thinking to myself, this is insane. Your dad just died. Why are you buying bananas? But we needed bananas. We'd be waking up for breakfast tomorrow morning. There wouldn't be any bananas. So there I was. And lots of other stuff still needed doing too, so over the coming days I would navigate parking lots, wait in restaurant lines, and sit on park benches, pushing back tears, fighting to stay upright, and in general, always being seconds from a total, blubbering, room-clearing freak-out. I wanted to wear a sign that said, "I just lost my dad. Please go easy." And while I didn't want to physically wear my actual circumstances on my chest, it probably would have caused people around me to give me space and speak softer and move more carefully. Everyone around you, the people you share the grocery store line with, passing traffic, sit next to at work, encounter on social media, see across from the kitchen table, and may I insert, call a radio show, are all experiencing the collateral damage of living. They're all grieving someone, missing someone, worried about someone. Their marriages are crumbling, or their mortgage payments late, or they're waiting on their child's test results. Maybe they aren't mourning the sudden tragic loss of a parent, but wounded, exhausted, pain-ravaged. People are everywhere, every day stumbling all around us. And yet most of the time, we're fairly oblivious to them. Parents whose children are terminally ill, couples in the middle of divorce, people grieving loss of loved ones in relationship, people marking the anniversary of a death, kids being bullied, and parents carrying that weight. Teenagers who want to end their lives. Parents worried about their depressed teenagers, spouses whose partners are deployed in combat. Single parents struggling to feel like they can even make it in life. Everyone is grieving and worried and fearful. And yet none of them wears the signs. None of them have the labels. And none of them come with written warnings reading, "I'm struggling. Go easy."
You know what we're about to do? We're about to get real. We're about to have conversations that Christians have behind closed doors. The scary ones, the ones that make you feel uncomfortable. That's where we're going. Why? Because we're family. Ustedes son mi familia.
So this is the Brian and Janelle podcast. She's Janelle and I'm Brian. If you don't want to miss anything, all you have to do is just hit that subscribe button to get a notification whenever we drop a new episode. This is the Brian and Janelle podcast. We've been sitting on this article not knowing what to do with it for the last 3 months.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, God knew. We didn't know until just now. Mm-hmm. God wanted us to talk about it today.
Right.
So it would seem.
Here's what it's called, and it's by pastor and writer John Pavlovitz. The article is called "Everyone Around You is Grieving. Go Easy." He writes this: "The day my father died, I was at the grocery store buying bananas. I remember thinking to myself, this is insane. Your dad just died. Why are you buying bananas?" He said, "But we needed bananas. We'd be waking up for breakfast tomorrow morning. There wouldn't be any bananas.
Yep.
So there I was.
Wow.
And lots of other stuff still needed doing too. So over the coming days, I would navigate parking lots, wait in restaurant lines, and sit on park benches, pushing back tears, fighting to stay upright, and in general, always being seconds from a total blubbering, room-clearing freak-out. Oh, we've all been there. I wanted to wear a sign that said, "I just lost my dad. Please go easy." And while I didn't want to physically wear my actual circumstances on my chest, it probably would have caused people around me to give me space and speak softer and move more carefully. And it might have made the impossible almost bearable. Everyone around you, the people you share the grocery store line with, pass in traffic, sit next to at work, encounter on social media, see across from the kitchen table, and may I insert, call a radio show, are all experiencing the collateral damage of living. They're all grieving someone, missing someone, worried about someone. Their marriages are crumbling, or their mortgage payments late, or they're waiting on their child's test results, or they're getting bananas 5 years after the death of a loved one, still pushing back tears. Maybe they aren't mourning the sudden tragic loss of a parent, but wounded, exhausted, pain-ravaged. People are everywhere, every day stumbling all around us. And yet most of the time, we're fairly oblivious to them. Parents whose children are terminally ill, couples in the middle of divorce, people grieving loss of loved ones in relationship, kids being bullied, and parents carrying that weight. Teenagers who want to end their lives, people marking the anniversary of a death, parents worried about their depressed teenagers, spouses whose partners are deployed in combat. You see what we're doing? Single parents struggling to feel like they can even make it in life. Everyone is grieving and worried and fearful, and yet none of them wears the signs. None of them have the labels. And none of them come with written warnings reading, "I'm struggling, go easy." And since they don't, it's up to you and me to look more closely and more deeply at everyone around us, at work or the gas station or in the produce section. And we should all assume they aren't just hanging by a thread, but because most people are hanging by a thread. And our simple kindness can be that thread that keeps them going. And isn't it interesting? This is why I say God would put this in here because, again, many of you have said really kind things, and I am grateful for that. But we have to remember, oftentimes when people are lashing out, it's because they're hurting. And how often in life, we talk about this as a team all the time, because it's one of those ugly things about being in ministry. And talk to your pastor about it. And if you get him in a quiet moment, he'll tell you, you'd think it's all sunshine and roses in ministry. It's not. Christian people are hurt too, and they hurt people when they're hurt. And so it's a discipline to do so, but truly loving your neighbor is understanding that if they're frustrated with you or being rude to you, it probably has nothing to do with you. They're probably hurting.
Right.
I bet you carried around your dad's sickness for months while he was living and years afterwards.
Yeah. That stood out to me when she said buying bananas even 5 years after, because if you've lost someone you know, it feels like yesterday. When we talk about grieving, how many people have lost someone recently? But it covers everything. You know, it covers, like they say, there's people that are going through illnesses that months and months before he passed, it was the caring for him and watching him as he dealt with the illness. But then there's the tests you're waiting for. And it's not just parents. It could be a friend or a cousin or worry, the mortgages, etc. That widens it for me because it's like, wow, there are a lot of us that are struggling. And it kind of helps me put it in perspective of like the simple trips to the grocery store and not getting so defensive. You know, when somebody goes off on you or they're rushing you and just frustrated with you, I'm very quick to take it personal and say, man, they're mean, or what's wrong with them, or what did I do?
We all do that.
Most of the time, it has nothing to do with me.
And you know, the only critique I would give John Pavlovitz is that he tended towards the more dramatic situations in life. I remember there was a day, one of my 5 kids, it's the beauty of having 5 kids is you can talk about them and nobody knows who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Looked at me sobbing and said, "Why did you move me here?
Oh.
I didn't want to come here. I want to go back."
Yeah.
Wow.
So how do you think I behaved driving then after that?
Right.
I get a short temper then, and I was probably rude to somebody. I don't remember the specific circumstances afterwards, but I know there's those times when you're driving when it has nothing to do with drivers around you, but you're a little rude. Maybe you're like making
Yes.
facial expressions at people, and they can see it.
Yeah.
It's not about them. It's you're mad that you're late to something, and you're going to disappoint your spouse because you're late.
Right.
Or your kid just looked at you sobbing, saying, "Why did you move me here? I don't want to be here." That causes us to lash out.
Then what do we do about that?
That's a tough one. Let's talk about that.
Our question to you is, how does this change how you engage people throughout the day? And most of the times is strangers or people that are not that close to you. You have no idea what they're struggling with. And now that we're recognizing we're all carrying burdens, how should we engage differently? We have a listener texted in and said, "In the mornings on my way to work, I stopped at the same gas station every day. I've become known as the coffee lady, not because I buy coffee every day, but because I always purchase a coffee for someone else. It's my little way of trying to make someone stay brighter. Whoever the next person that's in mind, I figure God will place them there if they need that little extra pick-me-up. And on numerous occasions, I've walked in and approached someone that needed it most, and I have people buy coffee also for them."
And see, it is little acts like that that ultimately acknowledge it.
Yeah.
We're all hurting. Somebody needs some encouragement today.
You're right.
I think it's part of the journey of Christian humility. And now I know that the beginning of wisdom, the Bible says, is fear of the Lord. I know it says that. But there's also a passage in James that has always struck me where James talks about the idea that if we want to be wise and we want to have successful Christian lives, the beginning is humility.
Yeah.
And humility says, it's not about me. Humility says, you know what? I don't think this person's mad at me. I think they're just hurting. And that changes how we respond.
Humility and then also maturity. As humans get older, we start realizing, learning to look at life through other people's point of view. You know, and sometimes when we do get defensive or we do kind of react to people quickly, we get caught up in only our perspective. You know, and if we want to approach relationship and people, I think in a more mature way, you start learning to stop and look at things from their point of view, even if it's road rage. I mean, that's just simple. Like, okay, who knows what meeting they just walked out of, which is kind of what you've been saying.
And that's why I think Jesus' summation is so frustratingly simple. Hey, God, what's the most important commandment? He's like, all right, here it is. Whole law of the prophets summed up in this. Love God, love your neighbor.
Wow.
It is in that. Check this out. The passage in James I was referring to, James 3:13. If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works, with the humility that comes from wisdom. You want to do good works? It starts with humility.
Linda, good morning. You're on the air.
Thank you for your time this morning. I have this precious blessing that was offered to me probably 20 years ago, and I went to a Bible study, and the minister, I did not know him, and he said, "Before we begin, will you pass the peace with your neighbor?" And he said, "And when you do, will you say this?" And I think that this covers everything that you all have been talking about this morning, and this is it. May the Christ in me meet the Christ in you. And this transformational thing happened in my mind like light bulbs and fireworks. And I believe that Christ is the very best part of who I am. And so I remember leaving and walking and looking at people and seeing, like you were talking about, somebody look wounded, or you can say, gee, look at that person, they're dressed much better than I, or you can judge someone because of how they look. But if you say, may the Christ in me meet the Christ in you, it elevates us to this perfectly beautiful, precious, unconditional, loving plane.
Yeah.
And it's an invitation to see people in the very best light all the time.
And it elevates Christ, which is why I love it as well, because it's essentially saying it's not about you, it's about Christ in you.
Right.
Exactly. And it could be somebody of any age. And that, Janelle, leads to what you were talking about with we don't know if our kids are walking. Well, everybody's walking something. And it can also be if it's an exhilarating feeling you're having. But no matter what, that precious saying, may the Christ in me, the very best part of who I am, meet the Christ in you. So if you're feeling broken and you can say that, it's like, wait a minute, Christ has my back like no other. If I look for that in me and look for that in the other person or a whole family gathering, a whole meeting that you're at, it just invites this precious perspective.
Amen.
And it's grace-filled. It's forgiving. It's a blessing. I mean, it just really, I can't think of anything that says it better. So I thank you for your time today to let me share that blessing.
No, thank you for saying, because I'm confident that somebody else is going to go, oh yeah, I'm using that. Mm-hmm. I'm using that in my life.
Roseanne says, I want you to know that this topic that we've been discussing is for me. She says, speaking directly into my heart, it's a long story, but I've recently become a partner in a business and life has thrown curves at us that we never expected. And so I have had to work long hours and had many stresses, and my husband has stepped up and cared for me. She says she gets home as late as 10 p.m. Her husband has to get up at 4:30. So can you imagine managing their marriage? Yeah. But these are the people, when we don't think, oh no, it's people with tragedies or people with serious, even my dad, that's a serious illness. No, there's a lot of other burdens in between. You know, people are overwhelmed. People are scared or filled with fear or, you know, struggling with finances. When you realize that, you realize, man, that's like everybody around me. When we step out, what an opportunity to minister. We ask God all the time. I did this in my 20s all the time. Man, God, use me, use me. Every day is an opportunity for God to use you.
Yeah, and it's that reminder. I think really it would be safe to say as fallen people, everybody's carrying something.
Everybody.
There are very few times in my life where I can just kind of go, and we're good.
Yeah.
And so because of the stuff that's not good or that's frustrating or sad or whatever, I think we end up being hurt and then hurting other people, which is why, again, God orchestrates these discussions. Because here's the story. Go easy. Everyone around you is grieving.
Hey, hold up. Where are you going? You know you like your time with us. You want more. So look down, hit that button right there, subscribe, and you'll get updated episodes, and then you can hang some more.
And guess what? You can help us. How? A 5-star rating. Not 4, 3, 2, 1. No, 5.
You can also hang with us live, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Interact with us, talk with us. Download the Moody Radio app.
Or at brianandjanelle.org.
And we don't put all this together all by ourselves. There's some great people behind all this production. We want to thank Ron Eastwood, Kelly Ryder, Paul Carter, Doug Hayner, and our awesome and fearless leader, Josue Villa.
And finally, this podcast is a production of Moody Radio in Cleveland, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute.
Well, Brian...